So, now that we have talked about all 4 seasons of the original run, plus the 2 films, it's time to start wrapping things up. The original plan for this final part of the retrospective was to have a brief overview of the many avenues of merchandise the show has had over the years. You know, the books, the DVDs, the albums, the video games, the Epcot World Showcase Adventure, and give a very brief review and overview of those certain products. But it just wasn't working. At heart, I'm not really a merchandise person. I don't go out and snoop and obsess over the next line of merchandise and products for me to obsess over. One, because it doesn't really gel with my laissez-faire attitude and personality towards these sort of things, and 2, because I have like $69 to my name. I tried to push through it because I really wanted to deliver something good, but I was not happy with the way I was handling it. It felt extremely forced, and if there's one thing I don't want to do with this channel, it's put something out there that I am not proud of. Even if there are like little mistakes here and there, or little blips that go under the radar, I've generally and genuinely been extremely proud of the quality of work that I have put out. And I'm not going to change that just because I feel a little bit embarrassed that this video of all parts of the retrospective is going to be fucking short as hell. But I know that there are YouTubers out there who are far better at this and far more qualified than I am to talk about the Phineas and Ferb merchandise, and I'm going to leave it up to them. Fortunately, I do have something to add to this video and really send this retrospective off in some sort of style. And I suppose really this has been the topic that this entire retrospective has been building up to. Now that we know definitively that we're getting at least 40 new episodes of the show proper sometime in 2024 or 2025, it's a topic that I want to broach and that I feel is appropriate to send this retrospective off. It's a very simple question, really. What do I want to see out of a Phineas and Ferb revival series? This is a question that I have constantly asked myself and have gone back and forth on over the last several months since the show was announced to be returning. Because the truth of the matter is, there are a ton of different ways that the revival series could go. And honestly, I would love to see it go in all of those directions. On the one hand, the show's formula and its formulaic approach to storytelling is one of the biggest reasons why the show has remained so popular and so endearing over the years since it ended. The formula is so deeply baked into the show's nature that you do genuinely run the risk of fucking everything up should you change too much about the formula or deviate away from it or even abandon it in pursuit of something bigger or different. However, the different and bigger episodes, like Summer Belongs to You, like Save Summer, like the Marvel and Star Wars crossovers, Night of the Living Pharmacists, the 2 films, hell, even Ferb TV if you want to count 11-minute episodes, do prove that the show is capable of doing completely different things without completely adhering to the formula at hand. Those episodes proved to be some of the show's most popular episodes, and for good reason. It's funny, the formula allowed the show to find its footing and let itself get so popular, but it also allowed the show to deviate away from it on occasion and do bigger, and I'd argue even better things. There's also the dilemma of what's come since the end of Phineas and Ferb, namely Milo Murphy's Law and, to a lesser extent, Hamster and Gretel. Remember, Milo Murphy's Law is what established Dr. Doofenshmirtz's long-term story of becoming Professor Time, to the point where he spends the entire second season of that show living with the Murphys while he tries to start his adventure. The show is plainly and clearly stated to be taking place after the summer that Phineas and Ferb takes place in, and Hamster and Gretel presumably takes place after that. So if the new Phineas and Ferb episodes were just to go back to doing the old formula like normal, would that mean that it would take place entirely before Milo Murphy's Law? Personally, I hope that doesn't fucking happen. For one, I find myself kind of a sucker for shows that move the timeline forward and have an ongoing continuity, not necessarily an overarching story, just a sense that time is moving forward. Even if they don't want to actually follow through on the Dr. Doofenshmirtz Professor Time story that they set up in Milo, which in my humble opinion would be an objectively incorrect decision. I don't want this to be another Candace Against the Universe situation where they're simply going back for more lost material, as it were. To be fair though, it is completely reasonable to speculate how much that would actually matter, as since it's established that Phineas and Ferb basically do the same thing every summer, how much of a difference would it actually make to just say that this is the next summer we're going into? I can't imagine that much, which also ends up presenting a dilemma of its own. finding a balance between keeping the tried and true formula that let Phineas and Ferb succeed for so long, while also introducing new things and trying new kinds of stories and jokes so that the show feels fresh, so that the show doesn't fall into the rut that Dan and Swampy were originally so afraid the show was going to fall into, where they just hit the same notes over and over again and eventually lead to severely diminished returns, which is totally a possibility. I don't think the show can ever get completely stale because the ingenuity of the formula and knowing exactly what parts to change is what has allowed the show to endure for so long. But again, as I mentioned, the episodes where it skews the most away from the formula, the ones that tell the more grander, more unique stories and jokes, are the ones regarded in such high esteem and remembered so fondly. In a way, I'm worried that the show is ultimately set up to fail. So going back to the question that I posed, I guess ultimately what I want to see from this revival series is good stuff. I am game for whatever direction they want to take the revival seasons in. We know the episodes are going to be a part of Disney Channel's lineup and Disney Plus's lineup in some way. How exactly is yet to be established. So how the episodes are ultimately handled and distributed could play a significant role in what exactly we see from these new episodes. I don't think it's reasonable at all to expect or even want for the show to abandon what worked for it in the past with its original run. If you take too much of the formula away from Phineas and Ferb, it stops being Phineas and Ferb. But if you commit just to the 11-minute adventures with Phineas and Ferb, stick to the formula strictly, have Doofenshmirtz go back to being evil, have Candace being completely obsessed with busting her brothers, you end up running into the same problem that Season 4 had, where the shorter adventures ended up just feeling like going through the motions. Not bad per se, but not up to snuff with what had come before it, and I really don't want that. The longer episodes of Season 4, minus Act Your Age and the Alka Files, are some of the best and most memorable episodes the show had ever done, and while it's probably unrealistic to expect the show to get to those heights again right away, it would be incredible if it were able to, and this show is good enough to pull it off. But even if Seasons 5 and 6, or however the fuck Disney decides to promote this, end up flopping, it won't take away or ruin all of the good memories, all of the great material that came in the show before this point. This show was the shit back in its day, and for very, very good reason. And to be completely honest, I feel like we need a show like Phineas and Ferb in this day and age. In a time where network executives, including Disney's very own, fuck you, Bob, are hellbent on sabotaging creativity in the name of the next penny, here's a show that celebrates and glorifies imagination, creativity, unapologetic hilarity, and honestly, an underappreciated sense of community. I fucking fell in love with this show in 2008 when its first season was going, and I still love it to this day. Even with all of my concerns about what we're going to get from this show, I am beyond ecstatic that Phineas and Ferb is coming back for another go-around, and I and so many people that grew up with this show get to now share it with the next generation of people. I was entering my final year of college when the show originally ended. Now, at the time of this video's creation, I'm turning 30. He said it! They say that nothing lasts forever. In some contexts, that's true, but not in all contexts. Sure, Phineas and Ferb, the actual animated series, is not going to last forever. This order of 40 episodes that it's currently under might be it. They get through the order and then Disney tosses it aside, canceling it, which is exactly what Dan and Swampy did not want for it in the first place. That would suck. But Phineas and Ferb, the cultural phenomenon, the running gags, the incredibly funny jokes, the timeless music, all of that is never going away, no matter what. It's incredibly hard for anything, not even a show, anything, to make a cultural impact these days. And Phineas and Ferb had a lot working against it when it first came out. But you know what? They didn't care. It was a show that they wanted to make, and they made it, unapologetically, and it paid off. I don't know what the future holds for the show. I don't know what the future holds for Dan, Swampy, and everyone that works on the show currently. I don't know what the future holds for the state of animation as a whole. What I do know is that as long as people refuse to take no for an answer, as long as people refuse to accept the idea that they will never get their idea made, as long as people refuse to take no for an answer from people that have no business having their hands on creative arts at all, the long-term future of animation is great. long-term future. Everyone knows the story that animation as a whole was in a rough state in the mid-2000s when Phineas and Ferb had come out. Animation is once again in a very rough shape, albeit for different reasons this time, but still. Phineas and Ferb is widely, and rightly so in my opinion, credited for being the catalyst to the animation renaissance that we saw in the early 2010s. Surely it couldn't happen again, right? That would just seem impossible. Well, what was it that Phineas said?
The only thing that's impossible is impossibility.
So now, all we can do is wait and see. I'd like to give a sincere thank you to everyone that's put up with me trying to get this frickin' retrospective out throughout the entirety of 2023. I am but one person with a tiny-ass YouTube channel, and I do not have the means to outsource any of this, nor the desire, because honestly, this is kind of fun. This was absolutely worth the effort, and I want to thank each and every one of you, but now I need to reassess where I go from here. Where do I take this channel? What do I do next? I have a few ideas, but none of them solidified, so I guess we'll have to wait and see on that as well.